Hey, this is Dave from metalepidemic.com. Thank you for checking out our YouTube video. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button below if you like this type of content, and we hope you enjoy the review. What's up? Dave, Duncan, Kyle, back from Metal Epidemic, back for another album review. And for this review, Duncan Kyle and I have been checking out the new album from Welsh metal band Venom Prison. The band's new album Erebos will be released on February 4th on Century Media Records. So, these guys have been active since around 2015, and Erebos will be the band's fourth album. The album was recorded and produced by Mr. Scott Atkins. He was in a wee band back in the day called Stampin' Ground. What a band. What a band.
We saw them play with us Every Time I Die. And Tuts, I believe.
Volleyed my laptop there.
Yeah. That's how excited they've got. Yeah, they open for Every Time I Die at Tuts, I'm sure.
Maybe. I was going to say Chimera, but maybe it wasn't.
No. I never saw Chimera at Tuts. Yeah, you may have seen them more than once. I never saw Chimera at fucking Tuts.
When they had the different drummer? No. You must have been there. Must have been.
Maybe I was. I can't remember. Stamping Ground, I'm sure, open for...
This is like... Tuts, we know that.
Talking about Venom Prison here. Stamping Ground definitely open for Every Time I Die at King Tuts. And I will Google that while you give more details, David.
Okay.
And then I will retract it as soon as I realise I was completely wrong.
Yeah, it was definitely Tuts. Can't remember who was the headliner. Carved from Empty Words, though. Killer album. Check out if you haven't. Scott Atkins has worked with such bands as Cradle of Filth, Silosis, Vader, Benediction, and many, many more. So we have been anticipating this one. I'm a big fan of Venom Prison, which I think I may have mentioned on our reaction to Judges of the Underworld. And I think it's safe to say that track got us pretty much, fairly hyped for this new release from Venom Prison. And it just so happens it's the first track on the album, so it basically gets you're sold kind of straight away. The first track, it just gets you pumped. But after I got over that excitement, I was like, yes, this is awesome. Let's go on to the rest of the album. I started to go through the album, and as you start to hit tracks like Nemesis, for example, I think that's track 3. It hit me at that point how tight they sound on this album. Like, if you go back and listen to the previous albums, there was a clear jump from Samsara to Primeval, but you can hear it here again. Like, there's a real feeling of kind of unity on this album that I don't think I've ever heard as much from Venom Prison. But there's also a jump in terms of the songwriting on this album as well. You can hear as you go through the album that they've really kind of drilled down into the detail of the kind of track structures on this release. Even the riffs as well. Every riff or melody feels very well thought out, and kind of dynamically they are like placed to have that like maximum impact on this album. That's also bolstered by what is, in my opinion, their best production to date. I think Scott Atkins has done a fantastic job on Erebos. I like the sound they had on Primeval, which was, again, I thought a kind of step up from Samsara. But this is definitely the most kind of polished sounding album. But when I say polished, it's not like too shiny or like pristine that it loses its heaviness or ferocity in any kind of way. Like when those big kind of discordant breakdowns on Judges of the Underworld kick in, it still sounds utterly vicious. That track that we listened to also brought us some clean vocals, which was something that we hadn't really ever heard from Venom Prison or Justine. But those cleans on that track are so haunting, like really, really infectious. That vocal line, that Guilty as Charged vocal line, I had it stuck in my head like for days afterwards. It just kept going through my head. It's a really cool melody. And I think this like kind of evolvement of the band's sound is something that they are clearly always keen to push on every album. They never really put out two of the same. There's always something that they've been working on in between releases. And vocals is clearly one of them for this album. Justine sounds immense on this release. Her tone is nastier than ever before. And those cleans are very well placed, never overused. And even with that little bit of melody, this it never feels like they've watered anything down or like they're trying to add like a commercial streak in any kind of way. But I'd say that I'd kind of back that up by saying the guitars and the guitar work on Erebos is the same. I noticed a huge difference in the kind of quality of riffs. And not that they were ever bad before, but on this album, it feels like they kind of draw you in a bit more. I was kind of excited to what was coming next. Also found them a bit more memorable than in previous albums. But I think that comes from the kind of amount of kind of variance that you're getting on here on Erebos. Like, they've got the kind of staples, the death metal and the hardcore, which they've always had, and the kind of straight up metal moments. But there's a bit of kind of like melodic death metal, a little bit of kind of blackened death metal in here as well. You can hear that like kind of mellow death streak on sections of Comfort of Complicity. There's a little bit on Castigated in Steel and Concrete, and again on Veil of Night. I was hearing that kind of almost like at the gates type kind of pace and little characteristics in the riffs. And I think that kind of mix of styles and the kind of hookiness of the riffs, it makes coming back for re-listens really rewarding on this release. Same in the lead work and the solos, they're really Moorish. Also, you've got the addition of the keys and the kind of strings that kind of help give the kind of tracks a change in tone or really lift a section to the next level, make it sound really huge. There's also, although there's loads of heaviness on this, there's also some really nice sections of melody and like kind of calmness across the album and amongst all the chaos. And I love that contrast. Again, you get a bit towards the end of Comfort of Complicity in the form of some really kind of uplifting lead work, and then that melody then bleeds into track 5, which is Pain of, is it Oisis? Is that how you pronounce that? Oisis is the goddess of misery, Oisis, basically. But it's funny that track is like probably the least heavy track on the album. But it works perfectly, sitting kind of in the middle of the album. A nice kind of like breather moment before the next track. It kind of pummels you with all sorts of kind of blackened death and blast beats. That track that comes right after that, is it Golden Apples of the, what's it called? Hesperides? What's it called?
That's about your pronunciation's as good as mine.
Golden Apples of the Hesperides.
Hesperides. Right? Yeah. We'll go with that.
Some really cool kind of hardcore breakdowns in there as well. Which like on paper you probably think like hardcore with like the blackened death metal. Not sure if it would work, but it absolutely works, and they blend it really well. I think my favourite kind of payoff of the album was Gorgon Sisters. Oh yeah. It feels a little bit more kind of old school Venom Prison, which I loved, but the kind of tease, there's a kind of like discordant kind of riff they tease a few times throughout the track, just kind of giving you that little taste of it, and then they obviously like unload it towards the end in full force, which was awesome. But there's a lot of kind of like payoff moments on the album, so it feels quite satisfying when you're listening to it. Also, I don't know about you guys, but I found that this album really flew in when I was listening to it. Like every time I listened to it, I kind of lost track of time. It just flew past. This is strong. This is a very strong release from Venom Prison. It still sounds like a Venom Prison album, which is at this point is very well oiled, and it's, as I said, it's the tightest they have ever sounded. But I also like that they are experimenting with things. They're taking a few more risks here and there, adding in different styles or some melody, a bit of piano or electronics. And I think those elements are really well balanced, very well executed. It's not perfect. I thought there were a couple of tracks that maybe didn't grab me quite as much as the rest. Castigated in Steel and Concrete was, like for an example, had some really cool vocal ideas. I loved the melody, but I thought it was maybe a little bit forgettable musically. I kept waiting on a kind of bigger moment to happen, and it didn't really happen. I did really like how the final track of the album kind of linked back to the intro though. I thought that was pretty cool. The same kind of vocal chant of Erebos over and over. That was pretty clever. It's quite a kind of memorable way to wrap up the album.
Also, not the only time that we're going to be discussing a similar use technique in the process of the many reviews we're doing tonight.
Yes,
because there's
exactly.
at least another 2 albums that do something very, very similar, which made me very happy. So,
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens next. I've enjoyed all their previous albums, but it feels like they've really stepped up on this one. And I can seeing that kind of growth between albums. Like I can only imagine what they'll do again on the next one. So yeah, very impressed indeed. Really enjoyed this one. Duncan, what about yourself? What do you think?
So I am probably the least acquainted with Venom Prison out of the 3 of us, I think. And that when we did the reaction video, that was the first time I'd ever heard them. So, I assumed they were American as well. So when you said Welsh earlier on, I was like, oh, right, fuck me then. But what I did do was I did actually check out a couple of tracks from the previous release before listening to this one. It was mainly due to the fact that we got a stream of this one in, so it wasn't like I could just play it on. It's a whole saga to do with technology we're not getting into here just now. Let's just say it this way: the streaming service that supplied this does not like Apple, right? Sorry, does not like Safari, which is Apple. So it caused some issues, but I got to listen to the album today. So I've only had a chance to listen to it twice. I will listen to it more for sure once it's formally released. Like you were talking about improvements and sound, the thing that came for me from listening to that handful of songs from the previous one to listen to this was it reminded me a lot of the jump in not only sound but kind of almost in importance as well that you used to get in the early transitions between the Lamb of God albums. Like, so if you listen to New American Gospel, for example, the first one is very raw, very gritty, just like really ugly, kind of harsh sounding. And then by the time you're listening to kind of As the Palaces Burn, which is not a long time, there's just this monumental shift in, all right, they've found the sound that they really like, they've found the production they really like, and you better strap yourself in. And that's kind of what I got here, was just like confidence on this album seems like huge. And now, I obviously can't compare it to the previous ones fully, in that I've not listened to everything they've done before, but the balance between the melody, the harshness, like you say, those blackened elements, the thrash elements that you get here, the kind of brutal pummeling parts, kind of juxtaposed against really well used keys. Like once again, like keys should not be through every single song. They should only be there primarily to uplift sections or bolster things out, thicken out the sound. And that's exactly how they're used here. I was kind of like floored because we'd heard Judges of the Underworld, and then we'd heard the second single, which didn't sound anything like it. I can't remember the name of that one. But it sounded fuck all like it, to the point where I was like that. Well, I mean, like, and it's always difficult with singles because you're like, so is that their sound? Or is that their sound? Or is this the most commercial they get and everything's totally different? Or, or is it like Dillinger, where these are only the 2 songs that can be put out as singles and everything else is anarchy? You just don't fucking know. So I was very curious. This album, which clocks in about 50 minutes, not only flows, I listened to it twice back to back today, not only flows really, really well, but it is over before you know it. And that to me is a testament to really interesting songwriting, great pacing, and the ability to switch things up. There's not one song side by side with another song where it's hitting them with the same pace or the same ferocity or doing the same sort of opening riff. When one finishes and moves into the next one, it is clearly a break into the next song, and they're trying loads. Elements of hardcore, which I was not fucking expecting at all, hit you, and they are perfectly placed on the album. Like, they give it that punch right where that punch is needed. But then, like, you get like a solo comes out of nowhere, and then these thrashier elements, this kind of new wave of kind of American like heavy metal from like the early 2000s stuff kicks in. You're like, what the fuck is this? And it never stays long. It never, like, that's the beauty of listening to this album, is the switch ups between what they're doing and the composition is just engaging. Very much like yourself, like full on horn for the Gorgon sisters, even though historically speaking they had snake for hairs. You know what I mean? Down to clown with that. I will take the venom bites from the Venom Prison. Vocally, dude, what a vocalist. Like, what a range. Once again, this is not the only time I'm going to be saying this tonight. There's something very, very exciting going on in kind of female vocals just now in the metal genre. It used to be, old man McLeish here, used to be that women tried to sound like men.
Yeah.
And I mean, there was a place where it kind of worked, but also didn't really work. Like, women just have just a better tone in general. They can do more with their voices than men can do. And I love the fact that we're getting more of that coming through, whether it is a spirit box where you're hearing something so sickly sweet and saccharine, but it works with the music, down to this level where you're getting a bit of gruff, a bit of snarl, a bit of, once again, venom, but then not afraid to switch into melody, and the melody is really, really well written, and it works. It's not a case of, well, do we need to put some, we'll just try it here. It totally fucking works. Production, chef's kiss for the old production. Once again, I did not know it was the Stamping Ground that did the production. It's fucking great. It is tight, everything nice and audible, and it just made me happy. Like I said before, I will openly admit this is the first Venom Prison album I've listened to front to back. This will not be the last Venom Prison album I listened to front to back. I thought this was fucking great. So yeah,
nice.
I've got to say about that.
Kyle, what do you think?
I think the bass tone on this album is fucking insane, and I love it. Just I don't know, yeah, just echoing what you guys have said. Really, it's that one track. I can't remember what it's called now. They're opening on Judges of the Underworld, right?
Yeah.
The way they mixed the clean and the dirty vocal at the same time gave me like shivers. I was like, that's awesome. That's so good. You know, not one doesn't overpower the other, but like, and they're just, they're perfect. It's great. And the production, I'm glad he touched on that, because on this there is very little fuckery. I love it. It's how bands should sound. Just don't fuck with it. Just make them practice so they're this tight. I can't believe how tight they are. Yeah. And then just let them rip in the studio. And
that was the Stamping Ground thing though. Like back in the day, if you listen to those albums, it was all like recorded to tape and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
They were very like old school, and you can hear a lot of that coming through.
Absolutely.
Which is not easy when you listen to their music. Their music was like, Stamping Ground's music was like at times insanely fucking fast, especially at the bass pedals, but it was all audible. So I mean, like you say, it can be done if you give it time. Also, like if you put too much of the techniques that you get in some of the other music we have been listening to of late, I just think in the case of this one, it fits certain sounds. Does not suit this sound at all, so I'm glad they didn't go down that road.
Yeah, me too. If I had drum samples on this and stuff, I'd be like, what the fuck? I mean, it would have just ruined it completely, but no, they've left it as honest as possible, and it really comes through in the performances that are captured on the album. It's just unbelievably good, like so tight, like you guys mentioned. And especially the guitar work is like some of the guitar work on the fourth track, Comfort of Complicity, was just blew my mind. I was like, what the hell? Like they're going through such heavy thrashy parts, and then they just switched up to this epic guitar solo with bits of piano and synth and keys, and I'm like, all right, carry on. Please don't stop. And speaking of which, the way they do switch all that stuff up is just effortless. It doesn't sound forced. It doesn't sound like, oh, now we want a bit of melody in here, so we're just going to shoehorn it in. It really does just comes through so like they absolutely mean it, and there's nothing weird about it. And they do it quite a few times on the album. Like Pain of Oasis, I guess. Such
if you can't pronounce it, there's no fucking chance we can, right?
I've never seen that word before in my life. But I will say that it's the golden apples of Hesperides. It's Greek, so I mean, but I know that. Anyway, what was I saying? Something about Pain of Oasis. Oh my god. You tell I've had a rough week, right? The pacing of that song is so much in contrast to the ones that came before it. But it's a good breather of a song, and it's a good break and all that. And there's another one, a couple of songs afterwards as well, I think, if I remember right. And I like the way that it ebbs and flows. It's not just all go and it's not all stop. But it's really well placed, really well done. You wouldn't think that a track 5 placement of something more calm would work so well, but it does. I thought it was a fantastically paced album. So, and like you said, it just flows. Time disappears when you listen to this, which is weird for such a long album. It's only 10 songs, but it's almost an hour.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
50 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about this. Like I complained last year about a couple of deathcore albums that were 50 minutes, and I was like, "That is too long, too long. I'm too old for this shit." And I was listening to this, and it was over, and an hour had gone. So
Yeah. Easy to just whack it on repeat.
Yeah.
yep, play it again.
For sure.
Yeah. I have been a lot. So yeah, I thought it was right.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's quite impressive that they've only been together since 2015. They're on album 4, and they sound phenomenal on this record. Like the improvements they make on every release is just awesome. Yeah, another really strong album. So ratings for Erebos. Yeah, this is a strong release. I think it's hard to be disappointed by this at all. I can't see people really complaining about this album at all. I thought their last album was good, was a solid album, probably about a 4 out of 5. I'd say this is probably the next step up, so I'm going to go 4.5 on this one. Duncan, what are you thinking?
That's a 4.5 for me. I don't have the history with the band that you do, but I know I'll be playing the shit out of this album moving forward. And hopefully, if they're Welsh, that excites me a little bit more because there's more chance that I'll get to see them play live. If they don't stop cancelling every gig I book tickets to, we're not going to go on an Author and Punisher rant, but just when the day the tickets arrived was the day I got the email saying the gig had been cancelled. So, yeah, but like hopefully these guys get up here. This is if you don't like this, you don't like heavy music. I think we can say that safely. So if that is the case, why the fuck are you listening to us review anything? Go on, shush. Remember, like and subscribe.
Kyle, what are you thinking?
I forgot what we're doing. I was just listening to Duncan. I forgot we're doing ratings. 4.5 out of 5. It's a fantastic album.
Yeah,
do not miss it. I mean, Venom Prison have always been on my radar, but this has just blown me away. So
yeah,
really
awesome. Venom Prison, Erebos, out on February 4th on Century Media Records. Links below to the band's Facebook and any pre-orders and stuff for the album. Check them out. Let us know what you think once you've heard the album. Drop some comments in below. That is a review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with a new review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.